of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Here's the brighter bulb right now himself, David Morassutti. Hi, David.
How you doing?
Not bad. Not in a really good mood because my microphone keeps moving, and I don't understand why. Stop moving. Is it Eduardo doing that to me, or is that just a natural thing that's going? Oh no, it's Eduardo. It's got to be Eduardo. I don't know. Somebody's moving the mic. No. Anyway, it's like the CFL. Somebody keeps moving the ball. It depends which hash mark you want it to be on, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The good old figuring out the hash mark business. That's gonna be a fun thing to go through over the next. How long do you think it's gonna take for teams to figure this out?
There's going to be the situation that we see all the time anyway. There are teams that I want to call them trick plays, surprises, an understanding of the rule book. For example, Winnipeg. For example, Hamilton. They love to throw surprises out there.
Yeah.
If you're an Argo fan, you know exactly those two teams have done it to them over the years. So it'll take a while. It'll be to varying degrees for every team. How advantageous any of the new rules are may not be, we may not be aware of it immediately, but I can tell you somewhere down the road, long before the playoffs, there's going to be an opportunity to go, oh, so that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, no, for sure. Some were saying that special teams is really where hash marks is really going to play, where it's kind of playing the biggest role right now.
Well, it's easier on the kicker, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you kind of want to get more points. So why are you making it easier for the kicker when you want?
Well, you're getting more points when the kicker's getting 70% of your points, and you make it easier for them. That you're starting at a higher percentage of the total points. That's just a joke. I'm just kidding. No, in reality, there's some stuff in the rules that will make offenses, it'll perk offenses up a little bit. But again, like we said, and like we talked about just moments ago, it's going to take a few seconds for the teams to figure out how advantageous it can be. And, it's going to be like defense and offense, right? Defense throws something at the offense. Offense goes, oh, okay, so now I'm going to do this. And then the defense says, oh, you're going to do that? Well, I'm going to do this. Now you've got a whole new set of rules where, coaches can play. So I hope they do. I hope they take advantage of the, of these new rules. I hope it shows up on the scoreboard. You and I both, I think, agree that the CFL without a lot of scoring isn't the CFL.
No, not at all. And I am very glad that they have preseason right now because some of what we've seen has not been bad. Some of what we've seen hasn't been good for some teams. So like they need this preseason. They desperately need. I think this was and I didn't even the one other thing that dawned on me was having padded practice back.
Yes,
and that's another thing I think a lot of people. I know why the players fought for it. I know why the players benefited from it, but also you look at how other football leagues operate. That you have to kind of think about what makes other football leagues thrive. I mean, I don't know if padded practice makes the biggest difference in the world, but it certainly does. Whatever you can do to simulate as much game action in practice, because these guys don't practice. They do practice for a good amount of time, but it's not like they're. They try to get as much out of these practices as they can because of the window that they have to do it. So yeah, I think these little things, hopefully. I think the expectation for me is I'm not expecting these little minor things to lead to massive improvement, right? I'm expecting it to come from the quality of play from the players itself rather than rule changes to
Yeah,
drastic changes.
you want it to be incremental, right? Like, a little bit here and there, just like a football team, right? Moving down the field. I've got a great way of describing, and I've never played golf with you. I don't really know anything about your golf game. I don't know anything about the way you dress. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that when do you really feel like a golfer when you go to the golf course? As soon as you put on the shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the first moment you go, I'm actually going to play golf. So, and I think that's the same thing for football players. It's not about the equipment and it protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the creation of something that that triggers your memory that you're playing football, and wearing the equipment says you're playing football. If you're not wearing equipment, you're playing flag football. That ain't football. Not to football players anyway. It's about contact. We talk about it in every sport, well, at least sports where there's physical contact, like hockey, lacrosse, and other sports like that, or even boxing. Until you get the first punch, you don't really feel like you're in the game, right? Until you make that first hit, whether it's football or hockey, you don't feel like you're really into the game, and the equipment affords you the opportunity to lay a little bit of lumber on somebody.
You know what? And it's like when you go out to practice and you're putting on the full gear, you feel like you are getting ready to play in the game. It's not practice.
Right. It's business time.
Exactly. So I totally agree on that. I think when it comes to getting the most out of practice, I mean that's the only way teams are going to improve is if you practice and you're able to take what you did in practice and put it on the field. So why not try to simulate as much of what you're doing on the field during the game in practice? So,
well, we saw a perfect example this week of that theory and that thought. If you're Chris Jones, you want the score clock and the audio to do what you went into the stadium and why you're standing in the stadium. You want the noise, the imitation of crowd noise. You want the video scoreboard to be working because you want to create the atmosphere that the team's going to be playing in. Just like putting on the uniforms, also playing through loud noise for the offense is really important. It's an adjustment that they need to be prepared for, and they need to understand immediately before they even go on the field that they're dealing with it. It's not something that you just, it naturally happens. So like everything else, you physically have to, they call it a run through for no other reason than that's what it is. It's a run through.
exactly. I mean, the only time I remember before the rule came in about changing from padded practice, the only times you would ever see players not have their full gear was for walkthrough. And walkthrough is it's a 20-minute thing where the team just goes through the plays. This is play A, this is play B. Where do guys have to go? Where do they have to be? And that's it. They're not actually throwing a ball. They're not actually doing a full run. It's just like the Argos at one point, I remember covering a practice, and they did a walkthrough in a tennis court. Like
they've done it in the gym, when it's inclement weather outside. So they do that all the time, like you're saying. But it doesn't have the same feel as wearing your uniform and actually running patterns.
Not at all.
Throwing a ball, catching a ball.
No, you can't really. It's so hard, right? We always talk about why is the NHL have so many preseason games? Well, it's mainly because you don't want to see the quality of play in preseason happening in the regular season. In baseball is I think the most meticulous one. They have spring training because hitters need to hit a X amount of they need has a certain amount of at bats before the season to get their timing right. Pitchers need X amount of innings pitched before they get into their routine, right? It's all about building a routine, if teams go through so many changes, you have to build relationships. You don't think a quarterback needs time with the receiver. You don't think, even for defensive players, you don't think the guys who are making the calls have to figure out positioning and all those things. It takes time. All
Yeah.
these things always take time.
Muscle memory is great, but you need muscle realization. You need the reality of actually using your body
Yeah.
and watching how it, because let's be clear, every athlete's a fine-tuned machine. So, in every fine-tuned machine, at Indy, they don't just start the cars and go around in circles. They
No.
have, they have practice runs. It's all the same thing. You got to get the machine going. You've got to make sure the machine is running the way it's supposed to. If there's any issues, you need to identify them before the games are real. That's why they need the extra, the innings pitch. That's why they need batting practice. That's why they have fielding practice. And if you look at the Blue Jays and the place they've created down there in Dunedin, you get a real indication of what practice, preparation, execution, what it all really means and how complicated it is, and good for them. Let's talk about the first game. The first game of preseason was Toronto going into Ottawa. Um, was a little bit of an adventure for them to get there. My quick summary of the game is that it was a very intense game, mostly for Ottawa. And I'm going to write it off to you and I have been talking all off season about Ottawa and the work that they've done. They really wanted to show, the staff, the fans, everybody out there that, oh yeah, we really made some changes, and they did a great job in literally displaying all the changes, including Mazzoli, which, normally, the Argos didn't use McLeod Bethel Thompson at all in that game. Mazzoli came in and played there for a bit. They used all their quarterbacks. It was a game that it seemed like Toronto didn't seem ready to play. And and then it seemed as they weren't ready to complete the game either.
Yeah, defensively they looked pretty good, right? Offensively, yeah, a lot to be desired, right? We know that this is a team that is trying to make up for a pretty, it was a good season for them, but they knew they left a lot out on the field, right?
They sure did.
This was a team that was making a pointed effort in saying we need to get more plays down the field. We need to be able to push those long plays. And I even said you got to get the quarterback that's able to give his receivers a chance to make those plays. Unfortunately, I mean, in this game, Chad Kelly did that. Pretty sure it's one of the first plays of the game. He threw a long pass down the field. That's what the Argos need. That's what teams need. The defense needs to be able to respect the deep ball, right? And if
Absolutely.
right, and I think at times against the Argos, teams didn't. They knew that the Argos struggled to get deep plays down the field, and that's where I think that's where the frustration for Ryan Dinwiddie was really apparent because he thought they were past this, and I think his first round of cuts after the first preseason game was quite.
Wow.
I know we'll talk about that after. I mean, we're focusing on the game, but I think this game was also a bit of a wake up call because we talked about how loaded the East is. There are four teams that can all viably go for first place, and you lost to a team that made the biggest change in their off season.
Well, I think the best way to accentuate what you said, Javon Leake. Sorry, this is rushing. I want to go to receiving. AJ Richardson, 42 yards and 2 passes. That's what you're looking for. Isaiah Wright, 4 passes for 7 yards. AJ Ouellette, 4 passes for 4 yards. DeMonte Coxey,
Or for 36.
for 36. Sorry. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that there weren't the deep passes that you're talking about, but AJ Richardson showed that it could happen. So the Argos can do it. They just, I just think they were on the road, and I don't think they were as ready to play this game as they will be to play the season. I know that the intense level of the game, as I said, Ottawa Coach Dinwiddie, he was livid after the game. You could see how frustrated he was and how much he expected, and they didn't deliver. Um, I can see that he's a very intense guy,
Mm-hmm.
but this was just an exhibition game, right? It wasn't. But I think he knows what you said, which is you got to come out of the gate in a hurry here this season in the Eastern Division.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't have I know some people are like, it's preseason. Let's not get too worked up about it. Well, problem is coaches need, they need to, they can't set the standard that it's just preseason. We'll get it together. This is also a veteran team in a lot of regards, right? I mean, there's a lot of the players that were in this game weren't exactly veterans. These were really pretty much the only players, looking at the Argos depth chart here, that were on this team the prior year were Chandler Worthy, AJ Willett, running back, so not even a receiver. Like, these were a lot of newer guys too, guys that they're giving an opportunity to, and I think there was a bit of a message that it wasn't good enough, right? And we're going to see in the second game, we're going to see a lot more of the starters get their chance, and maybe that's a bit of a message to them too. You know, you
Well,
guys,
they released Antonio Pipkin, so they're saying, and Chad Kelly's their number 2 guy.
yeah. I know we talked about it a little bit, and you want a guy with some CFL experience, a lot of guy with experience to be the backup, but I'm more of a give it to the best player, give it to the guy that's going to give you a little bit more. And Chad Kelly, even though it's only a limited amount of time we saw him on the field, but I see a guy here that wants to make plays, a guy that's trying to do all the things that are necessary to be successful. Um, I'm actually kind of glad that they're giving him the opportunity. I
I
think,
like the way they used him. I like the way the coach put him in for a string and then sat him down, and I'm sure they all had conversations. So da 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 da, and then he went out a second time a little later. I like that way of doing it, to give a guy pause to think about what just happened and prepare and ask questions considering what he saw. Because again, like putting the pads on, actually throwing the ball
yeah,
makes it more real. And the game was more real to Kelly. He heard about the Canadian Football League. He's watched the Canadian Football League. Now it's a question of executing in the league. And I liked his ability to run. And man, does he have an arm.
yeah, I think that's the part for me. It's Dinwiddie. I think he saw he sees what the potential is for Chad Kelly. That's what you need in the CFL. You need a guy that can scramble, make some plays. Also, you need a guy that can, not only throw the ball down the field, but can be accurate. That can be accurate. I think that's the important part there too. So I'm interested to see. I'm going to assume in their second preseason game, McLeod's going to get about half of that, roughly. I know and then maybe Kelly gets the rest of it. I know they're also looking to bring in another quarterback with Pipkin gone, a younger guy that they can bring along. But I mean, this was something I was curious about, because there was a little bit of hype surrounding Chad Kelly. This is a guy who's got a little bit of notoriety to him.
Hmm.
Was he going to do the right things to, you know do what he can to land a job versus trying to make himself look good, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Is he going to do the right things? And sometimes that's players who think of the CFL in a certain way don't necessarily always do that. But I think Chad Kelly, I think he's humble. His experiences have humbled him a little bit to the point of where he is now.
Yeah. I agree. When we talk about quarterbacks like Chad Kelly, now we're not talking about a possibly good quarterback. He could be a great quarterback in the Canadian Football League with the small little sample size of the tools that he has. If he can, if his football IQ is as good as it's been said that it is, he could be a great one. And that's what we need in the Canadian Football League. We need great quarterbacks. We've lost a couple. We need to see more great quarterbacks. So hopefully he can become one of those. We also saw 3 quarterbacks come in. No surprise, Jeremiah Mazzoli being as good as he is, and his stats reflected that. His ability to make key passes under tough situations, we saw that. But I also was impressed equally of Caleb Evans and Tyree Adams. They both impressed me. Good percentage in throwing, good yardage in the passes that they made. They looked really good.
Yeah, it just didn't land to a lot of points, right?
No.
I know it's the first preseason game, but I think for Ottawa, it's not just important to get Jeremiah Mazzoli going because we know what he can do. It's who's going to be the guy behind him. Who's going to push to be the guy behind? I'm going to assume Caleb Evans will have the
inside track
because of what he did last year and his and all those things. But I think there could be some. Ottawa will be very interesting because we also know Jeremiah Mazzoli hasn't been able to stay healthy, so that backup position is going to be very important for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I was impressed with you. You talked about how impressed you were with the Argo defense. I have to agree, the Argo defense was really good. Also was very impressed with the desire that Ottawa played with, and I really think they looked really good too. Now, they listed both the quarterbacks at 6'2" for Ottawa. The difference being that Tyree Adams is 185 pounds. Not a big guy.
No,
Does that matter to you?
It depends on the role that they expect of him, right? Is this a guy that you're gonna put in on the short yardage?
Yeah, that's you almost have to make him the backup.
Yeah, I can see that. But I think with size, it's Caleb Evans isn't exactly a big guy either, if I'm not mistaken.
6'2",
he's 6'2", 210. Okay, so he looks smaller than I guess.
I looked. I did.
I don't think the weight is too big of an issue. I mean, for some it might be, but
short yardage. You got to have a guy who's a little bigger. So how will this work? I mean, this is a great example. I think what we're seeing with Ottawa after one game, they're a great candidate for the 2 quarterbacks in the backfield. You can run Tyree in the short game and then have Jeremiah and Caleb out there at the same time. I'm just going to be interested when it first happens and see how defenses react.
Yeah, I think you also have to be kind of mindful about that too. I don't think you can go to that well too many times with the 2 quarterback plays because teams will catch on to it. Defenses will catch on to what you're trying to do. You almost have to save those opportunities for when it's truly necessary, when you could truly catch the other team off guard. Be interesting to see how that role plays in a little bit more, though.
It'll be really interesting. Were there any other players that caught your eye in the game?
Not particularly. I think like for Ottawa, it was nice to see the running game get going a bit there. I think that's something that they're going to need. I mean, Ottawa's, they've been back and forth with trying to get that running game going. And I think that's something they're going to have to continue to work on for the Argos. Running defense was iffy. I think that's something that they're going to have to work on a little bit more. But yeah, I think there wasn't really too much where no one really stood out in a big way, but there wasn't anyone that was just totally brutal either. It's kind of an okay game for both teams, I would say.
Yeah, their defense was obviously for both teams was very good. Couple of touchdowns. The Argos, it seemed like they really. I hope they find a way, pun intended, to be on an even keel. Hopefully the coach, um, you know, uh, to be as frustrated as he was is not a good sign. That's not a good sign.
It's not, but I think if you do it the right way and you pick your moments.
Yeah, he didn't do anything wrong.
No, no,
At
no. I
all.
don't think so
No,
either.
but I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, there's an inflection point when it comes to anger, and we haven't seen anything negative as far as that's concerned. But we can see that he expects a lot from his players, and that's can be a really good thing as far as the players understanding how serious the coach is.
Mhm.
On the other hand, you've got a team who has you know a lot of they have a lot of room to grow, Ottawa. So you have a team that ended the season in disappointment against a team that ended a total season in disappointment. But Ottawa, has a lot of room to improve, and that's something I think that's really important for them. And they did a good job of beating the Argos 23-17. But we'll remember that this is
Mhm.
just an exhibition game, and I know they mean a lot to players who are trying out for the team, but that's all they are. They're preseason games, and the key to the preseason game is you don't want to play bad enough to be, shown the door. Our next game is Winnipeg hosted Edmonton, and they lost 30-20. Edmonton's another team that needed to and did make a lot of changes. The biggest one, Chris Jones. I joked about the fact that the audio and the scoreboard didn't work, and he got really upset about that because he's a detail guy, and that's why he did that. So Nick Arbuckle went out there. He was 9 for 10, threw for 145 yards. We asked this question all off season: who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Edmonton Elks?
Good start for him, huh? You know what? I think I continue to believe that this was Chris Jones trying to light a fire under Nick Arbuckle,
Absolutely, that's what it was.
right? And look, we know what this Winnipeg team that they're the ones that's gonna have the target on their backs again this year, and I think it was a good thing to see Nick Arbuckle, put up the production that sort. I still think he got a bit of a raw deal in Toronto just because the opportunities weren't exactly. He had the injuries and he was in and out with games as well. Didn't really get a chance to really have a.
There were rumors that he wasn't vaccinated. That was the reason why he went. And if he wasn't vaccinated and that's why he went, that would have been something that, you know, wasn't a football issue, right? And that's the one thing about the pandemic that bothers me, and I'm glad we're not there anymore. At least I hope we never get back there again, is where it's not about football. And that's something,
Mhm.
now Nick Arbuckle is in Edmonton with a great opportunity with a team that's on the rise just because Chris Jones is the head coach and GM. Even Kyle Oxley looked pretty good, 9 of
Yeah,
11.
and we got to see the Trey Ford, the first round pick. I'm
Yep.
thinking this is going to be a player that you'll see the two QB use quite a bit because he's someone that that can make plays with his legs. I think they're going to use him quite a bit in that regard, just to get him on the field. And it's going to be a good thing to see because this is an exciting prospect. I know that I heard from some sources that the Argos were considering Trey Ford, but they didn't think he was going to go that early. But Edmonton decided to pull the trigger on that. But very excited to see what he can do. And if Nick Arbuckle's the starter, as we are pretty much, we're gonna put it in pencil because it's still Chris Jones. We can't put it in pen just
I
yet.
think it's him. I think it was
Um,
always him. And Chris Jones is he was he he created a quarterback controversy that extended beyond his own team. So,
yeah.
when it comes to quarterbacks, he has a lot of fun, and good for him. Have fun. Quarterback that was in there for Winnipeg, Dakota Prukop, a guy that we know from being in Argo camp. I've always liked this kid. Again, not a very big player, but
Mhm.
he seems to have the makings of being a big play quarterback. Now he was only 5 of 14, 35.7.
Wasn't as accurate as we like to see.
Wasn't the statistics didn't jump out at you, but I'll be interested to see him do okay. Drew Brown is the backup, and he looked pretty good. So and Winnipeg, of course, um, you know, this is the two-time Grey Cup champ. Preseason games are harder to get up for when you've won two Grey Cups back to back.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and their starting quarterback didn't play, so that you always take those games with a bit of a grain of salt.
Absolutely.
Good to see Nick Dembski continue to show why he is one of the underrated players in the league, in my opinion, in terms of receivers. I don't think he gets talked about enough. I know you talk about him,
Okay,
but
sorry.
but others. I feel like he doesn't get talked about enough, especially in that Grey Cup. He was very vital for them.
Key
Yeah,
player.
I'm interested to see which team in the West decides to step up and try to challenge the Elks a bit here. We
And
haven't
they
seen unfortunately we haven't seen Saskatchewan play yet.
not yet. Next week.
But I'm curious to see which team. Can Edmonton take a step? Is the Chris Jones effect going to be that much? Is it Calgary or is it Saskatchewan still on top? That's going to be an interesting battle there.
Very interesting. The other battle. The other answer to the big question in Winnipeg is the running back.
Right.
Johnny Augustine, 6 carries for 54 yards, an average of 9 yards. Wow.
They're looking for
He can keep something like that going. But then, they've got the team that knows how to block, not to take anything away from Johnny Augustine. But, Winnipeg is a really well put together team. They have a great system, one that won 2 Grey Cups in a row. And Johnny Augustine just has to carry the ball, literally and figuratively.
I think the impressive thing about Winnipeg is that they're doing it with Canadian running backs, both Johnny Augustine and Brady Oliveira. That's very impressive in that regard because
Absolutely.
they just let a future CFL Hall of Famer, probably arguably the best Canadian running back of all time, they let him go, and they still have two other really good Canadian running backs that average over. I always look at if they can average over 5 yards a carry, that's pretty decent, especially in the CFL when they only get 9 carries in total between those two running backs.
Oliveira 4.6 over his career, so he's very close to what you want.
Exactly. And he took a bit of a dip after that first game, his breakout game, but I'm very curious to see which one of them gets the bulk of the carries. I know that maybe they do it by committee, as they're both Canadians. They can kind of have a bit of that flexibility there. But yeah, that's I think continues to be a strength of Winnipeg is finding those really impactful Canadians in those positions that necessarily don't always go to Canadians.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Look at Cadwell Ader, Tanner, Caldwell Ader. He led the team in tackles and defensive tackles, a Canadian from Georgetown, Ontario. He fits the description you just mentioned.
Exactly. No, for sure. That's why Winnipeg has been able to sustain this run of dominance is because they have these Canadians that they keep trotting out every year. So I am yeah,
How
I'm
you
very
win?
yeah, for sure. And I don't know if I didn't watch enough of that. I watched the game, but I didn't watch enough to see if we saw the two brothers playing against each other. Because we had
I
Trey
didn't know.
Ford and we had Tyrell Ford on the other side
Yeah.
for Winnipeg as well. You know what, I'm getting a lot more excited with these younger Canadians. I am.
Well, you should.
I think CFL fans should get a little more excited about um, what the future of the Canadian uh, talent pool is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I totally understand what you just said, and I feel the same way. When I watch the Canadian Football League, I know this is going to sound silly, but I don't look for who's Canadian and who's American. I like to watch the game, and I like to think that you really can't pick out the Canadians versus the Americans. once you get past certain positions, right, like quarterback, um, defensive line, you know, uh, cornerbacks are starting to become blended more. Linebackers, even linebackers are as well. So, this business about lessening the amount of Canadians on a team, I don't buy it. I'm not for it. I like the idea that Canadian players are a part of the game in the Canadian Football League, an important part, an integral part, and they're starting to really show. Like I said, led the team in tackles, 5 tackles. So yeah, so Winnipeg all the time. They're always the team that shows us Canadian players and has them doing a great job. No doubt about it, but no but.
No, for sure. It's again, this is why we always say when we do, eventually when we do our predictions for the season, always tough to unslot Winnipeg until somebody.
Yeah, the only way to discount the champ is once they get beaten, and they're hard to beat. Our next game, if there's a team over the past few years um, that has fallen not freely, they haven't fallen freely, but they've fallen out of the talk about first place, Grey Cup favorite, the Calgary Stampeders. Is it fair to say BC unfortunately drew the unlucky straw to play Calgary first? This is a team, Calgary, that has a lot of pride and a lot to prove, and they have the players to do it. And no, needless to say, the management team as well.
I think Calgary was getting tired of some people saying that they've taken a step back.
Are you done yet?
Like we finally can say that when Calgary is not the same team. Bo Levi Mitchell's lost a step. Team's taking a step back. First preseason game, 41 points. No big deal.
None whatsoever.
21 20 they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, and the Argos and Ottawa struggled. I mean, to
Well,
get.
that was their best quarter. Both, Toronto and Ottawa. That's when they really scored.
Mhm.
This is like, what was it, 14, 21 for 21. I'm trying to remember. It doesn't matter anyway. Yeah, they scored a lot of their points in the fourth quarter, and you know, Calgary. This team, no matter how many times you try to to kick dirt on it, to bury it, they keep proving that nope, we're not ready. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Last year was a beautiful example of a franchise hurting a little bit, starting out the season in a way that no Calgary fan wanted, no Calgary fan expected, and they recovered really well. And I'm just wondering, David, and I think this year might be a continuation of what they did at the end of last year. And if that's the case, Saskatchewan and Winnipeg are going to be in for a fight for first place.
Yeah, I think the always I think what will break Calgary season obviously has always been Bo Levi Mitchell.
Absolutely.
They have solidified their backup position with Jake Mayer. He's going to be their backup. He's proven that he can step in and provide with Bo Levi Mitchell injured. I'm just curious to see, that team has gone through so much transition, so much turnover, and yet, yeah, they always find ways with to make it work. And I think, yeah, what impressed me is they did things a bit differently last year. It wasn't all on Bo Levi Mitchell. Kadeem Carey took no. He was I think their most important player last year, and their defense eventually got it going a bit. It took some time, but they finally figured it out after God knows. You know, this we always joke about finally the evil empire has fallen. In the CFL, the empire doesn't fall for too long for teams that know what they're doing, and we know John Huffnagel knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Sean Bain kind of proves that point. Running back a punt for a touchdown.
Yeah, I think they're realizing that they need to get more out of their running game. Like we always have the it doesn't matter who plays running back for Calgary because they got Bo Levi Mitchell who's going to throw for
Mhm.
bunch of times. But Bo Levi Mitchell, he had 3 completions in this game, and he also threw 2 interceptions.
That's not good.
No, and
We talk about that all the time, that with quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League, they can't afford to throw interceptions.
no, right? And on the other side with BC, the score maybe doesn't totally indicate everything that you saw in this game potentially. I mean, special teams played a huge role in this game, and it's preseason, so you always have to kind of take things with a bit of a grain of salt. But 6 points, I mean, they did score a touchdown, but 6 points in a preseason game, big yikes for me. Oh, I think we lost Frank here for a moment. Yeah, and then I also look at the thing with BC, and we'll talk about this when Frank gets back. Michael O'Connor, I was impressed with him. This is a guy who's finally trying to find out, can he be at least in the position to play some games at the CFL level. He did pretty well. Completed over 70% of his passes for 151 yards and a touchdown. I did like that from him. I'm curious to see. I still think that they need a veteran quarterback in BC. I know that that's something that they might look into, because Kevin Thompson unfortunately did suffer an injury, and so I do think that that's a team with 2 young quarterbacks. I do need a veteran in there. And maybe this was a bit of a humbling experience, this game. To lose a game 41-6, they punted the ball 6 times in this game. It's quite a bit, considering Calgary did 4 times. Not too bad of a discrepancy in that regard, but I think BC is still... There's fundamental flaws, in my opinion, with this team a little bit. Special teams, you can't have gaps like that. You can't give Calgary opportunities with the special teams to take over as they did in this game. You had a punt return go for a touchdown. That kind of kick-started everything for them. They had 1 missed field goal return for 45, another one for 36. That's not going to be good enough. And this is a BC team that new ownership, they're trying really hard to push things forward. And so, Frank, do we have you back?
Yeah, no, I've been listening to you for the last little while. Yeah.
But do you agree that this is a little bit concerning for BC, considering this was supposed to be a new owner that wants to make BC the next destination?
They were a little more aggressive. They crossed the line too many times. 13 penalties for 145 yards. That's a lot of penalties. They tried really hard, but they weren't disciplined. And the penalties are just an example of a lack of discipline. I think that lack of discipline showed up through their whole game. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's what I think their problem was, is that they lacked discipline. And this is a team like Ottawa last year that disappointed, that expects more this year. But as far as we're both concerned, I think it's fair to say that they're going a different direction when it comes to quarterbacks. They're making decisions that go outside the norm. And if that kind of thinking permeates within the team at a few more levels, that means it's going to take a little longer for the team to gain confidence in the system that they have in place. Because when you do things differently, 2 things happen. You need more time to adjust to what you're going to do, A, and B, the players who are doing just that need a little time, and the confidence in the team can be a little, like in this case, they tried doing more and they got penalties. It's like in every other sport. When you're worried about you love your teammate, you're trying to cover for your teammate, you end up doing things. Nobody plays well when everybody tries covering for everybody else. Everybody has a job to do. They got to do it. And penalties come up because somewhere, somehow, somebody's not doing their job.
Yeah, 13 penalties for 145 yards.
That's a lot.
That's and I 5 on defense, 5 on special teams.
It's a lot.
That's a yeah, like, that's something that's probably driving Rick Campbell up the wall.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that, that's not really the kind of stuff that training camps for or preseason. That's supposed to be stuff that you understand before you even take to the field. That's the scary part.
No, for sure. Like that's something that every 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 coach is just like, guys, penalties, penalties, penalties. Like they'll say it, do not take dumb penalties, and then unfortunately sometimes the game kind of overtakes a player a little bit, especially the emotional side of it.
Absolutely.
So I think there has to be a bit. You have to be a bit sympathetic at times. Some players, especially preseason, they try to see what can they get away with as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go over. We got a few minutes left. Let's go to the last game and the Montreal Alouettes and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Hamilton. We had our friends. Aaron was at the pregame, the tailgate. Hamilton does one of the best. A shout out to all those folks at the Hamilton tailgate. It's always a lot of fun. I always look forward to going to those. Trevor Harris looked good, 9 of 12, 75%, 124 yards, a TD, no interceptions. Even Dominique Davis looked good as well. They just didn't look good enough.
Mm-hmm.
In the fourth quarter, they were outscored. They outscored Hamilton 8-6, but they still fell behind by 2 points. So this was a game that could have gone any way. And Hamilton is always very tough at home. So that says a lot about this close game on Montreal's, behalf.
Yeah, I think, it was good to see that Trevor Harris is, still Trevor Harris, efficient, able to put up big, still able to put up some big plays. It was nice to see Dominic Davis look pretty good too. This is a guy that if he doesn't catch on in Montreal, maybe
Oh,
another team takes him on and says we can make something out of a guy who has some CFL experience. I talked a bit about BC, and they might need a guy with a little bit of a veteran experience. Maybe they take a look at what Dominic Davis, if he doesn't stick in Montreal, because you're the third guy. I don't know if Montreal, if that's gonna be an appetizing enough thing for both parties in that regard. I think it's nice to see that you know we're having teams close that gap on Hamilton a bit too at home. For too long, they were too dominant at home. Like that's, I know at times Calgary was really dominant at home, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and Hamilton was. I think it's the crowd advantage too, right? You get a little bit of you get a bit intimidated when you go and play in those places. I just remember that Grey Cup. That was the most impressive part for me with Winnipeg is they went into a truly hostile crowd. That was 90. Okay, I'll give it Winnipeg a little bit of crowd. I'll give it 85% Hamilton fans at that Grey Cup. And Winnipeg did not let that become a factor in the game, right? And so
absolutely.
I think maybe this is a bit, Toronto had finally beaten Hamilton, and they got the better
Regular
of them.
season, yeah.
Montreal came close in this one. They've come close to another game. So if I'm Hamilton, it's good you got the win, but now are you a little worried that teams are starting to close that gap on you a little bit and taking away
Well,
some of those advantages?
well, I see that Matt Schultz got a chance to play. Good for him. 3 of 4, 75%, 20 yards. Um, I like this kid. You know, he's a great opportunity in Hamilton because Hamilton plays the way he likes to play. He's a very aggressive quarterback, and he's a guy who loves making plays when plays are broken. He's
Yeah.
he's a real fixer. So he looked really good, and I had some friends of mine, the Hamilton fans. The first thing they said to me is, "Well, we like this Matt Schultz kid. Wow, he looks really good." Yeah, he does. He's a really good player and was great in Montreal. And wasn't he here in Toronto for a coffee?
Good question.
He came here to Toronto for a coffee.
I'm not exactly sure. I
Am
don't.
I thinking of him? No, you know what? It's not him.
You're thinking of someone else from
No,
Montreal.
I'm thinking of Pipkin.
Well, I'll tell you this: the other quarterback, Jalen Morton, is a big kid, 6'3", 237 pounds, 24 years old, really young guy. Um, Again, this is maybe another guy that will get that. Because we know Hamilton likes to do some interesting things on the field. He had 4 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. His size, that's going to be I think they're going to use that to their advantage a little bit.
Absolutely.
They don't want Dane Evans running the ball as much as he did. He's taken a bit of a beating the last few years. So you got to find guys that are going to be able to do it and take that load off of him. Schultz was actually pretty good himself, right? He also had a touchdown on the ground.
Yep.
So it's going to be an interesting battle in Hamilton for that backup role because it's going to, again, they've proven that they've needed 2 quarterbacks to get it done. So, and they don't have the safety net of Jeremiah anymore. They need someone else to step up. So it's good. That's a backup positions. I'm very curious about them all across the league because we have seen quarterbacks go down. We've seen guys have to step up. Which team is more prepared for it? That's what I want to see.
Yep. Next week, the first game next week is Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. And just because you miss Saskatchewan so much, they play twice next week.
Oh, yeah. Then I'm sure Craig Dickinson loves that. Oh, we don't play, and we played twice in a span of a few days. They play the Tuesday and they play the Friday.
It's exhibition.
It's exhibition. At least they have 2 different, teams that they can put out there. But coaching staff, it's like we got to prepare for 2 different games in the same week.
Reviewing is going to be a little harder, right? For them, the game film diagnosing and tearing it apart is going to be interesting. But somebody, 9 teams, once Halifax is in, we'll solve that problem. So every team can play every week, or 2 teams can take a week off and nobody gets hurt. So it'll be interesting at that time. For now, this is what happens. Look at the Argos don't play in week 1. I think that can be a problem. That can be a problem.
Saw it before. I remember the last time they didn't play in week 1. It was one of the worst games I had ever seen the Argos play. They lost 60. It was in the 60s, and the home opener against Hamilton.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's But look, the season started. There were some good games. There was some good scoring. The most important thing that I can muster, and with sincerity as well, by the way, is that as far as the CBA is concerned, we had a tiff. The owners and the players had a bit of a disagreement. The players and the players had a disagreement, but we won. The fans of the Canadian Football League won because we got a chance to watch football come back.
It was glad also that they were able to establish a long relationship. This is
7 years is a good time frame.
Yeah, no longer have to deal with a year by year by year by year. 7 years, and there's truly talking with Henoch Mwamba about this. They truly feel like partners now, more so than ever with the CFL and trying to grow this game. I know there was a bit of a battle and a bit of division within the CFLPA, but I think they all got their issues out there, and I think that's the important thing.
Absolutely. David, thank you for this.
As always, I'm glad that we finally get to talk about games.
Absolutely. For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.